Hi everyone. Today's lesson looks at functionist explanations of crime and deviance. Where do functionists believe crime comes from? Quite a few different explanations, so it's split into a few different lessons. And today we're going to have a look at the first couple. So over time, many different functionist thinkers have suggested various different reasons. For the GCSE spec, we're going to look at four in total, four different explanations. This lesson covers the first two, and then in subsequent lessons, we'll look at the next two. Today, we're going to have a look at inadequate socialization and a lack of social bonds. So the first idea is that people commit crime because they have inadequate socialization. So the idea that their socialization, they're being taught norms and values, simply isn't good enough, that they're not making suitable choices because they haven't had the right norms and values instilled in them. This is actually a new right idea, and you'll know we talked about the new right last year on families. That guy up there with the blue background is Charles Murray, and he argued that in society we have an underclass, a group of people dependent on welfare benefits who don't conform to the norms and values in society of working hard, of getting a good job, and therefore they're more likely to turn to deviance to help them to support their lifestyle. Perhaps that would be finding some sort of meaning through using drugs or through crime in order to make money because they don't have a job. As part of this view, the New Right believe that the nuclear family is the best type of family. And remember, we talked about how lone parent families for the New Right were very problematic. The New Right argue, and remember they are sort of as close to functionists as you can get, argue that too many families are not parenting their children properly, and I've put that in inverted commas, that children are experiencing a lack of control by families and parents, and therefore this is made worse by high levels of divorce, single parent families, fathers not being involved with their children, meaning that deviance is too much of an option for some, that boys perhaps look to gangs and deviant groups in order to get their role models because they don't have a father figure, but that single mums might be too busy in order to parent their children for various reasons, perhaps because they're working so much to make ends meet. So Murray puts the blame for crime at the heart of a breakdown in the conventional family. He thinks that the family is not doing a good enough job of teaching children right from wrong, and therefore deviance is too much of an option. He also goes on to argue that in some families, deviance is so common that young people grow up not knowing an alternative. And I've put there the mafia on there. But the idea that in the mafia, if you're born into the mafia or an organised crime family, that's all you know, and you become socialized into those as norms and values. Now, I'm not saying that most criminals in this country are born into mafia families, that's not true. But if you're born into a family where crime and deviance are normal behaviour, you're going to grow up believing in that as well, and that will shape your norms and values. So, inadequate socialization is the idea that young people are not being given the right norms and values to prevent them committing crime and deviance. But there's a bit of a problem with this. I'm hoping you're all screaming at your computers now and saying, hang on, miss, that's completely wrong and unfair. Does this explain all crime? Probably not. It might explain why young people commit what we call juvenile delinquency, breaking the law for fun with their friends, going out and seeking alternative ways of gaining kind of support and status from their friends. But does it explain murder as a crime of passion? Does it explain theft in kind of a white collar in a business environment, sort of banks doing insider trading and things like that? Probably not. If we were to do some research, would every single criminal come from a broken home with inadequate socialization? Again, probably not. There are lots of stories of children who've had wonderful upbringings who just turn out bad. So maybe there's an alternative reason for that. And it's also a huge generalization to say that all lone parent families lead to criminal children. We're not saying that by any stretch of the imagination. So there are huge problems and flaws in Murray's argument. So, quick task, pause here. Firstly, write a sentence to explain how the new right believe inadequate socialization leads to crime. Okay, and then secondly, tell me your opinion. Do you agree? And explain to me your view. Only needs to be a couple of sentences, but tell me whether or not you agree with this view of inadequate socialization. And then the second idea that we're looking at from a functionist perspective is the idea of social bonds, the things that hold society together and hold people feeling a part of the society that they live in. And this is the work of a guy called Hershey. So Hershey argued that whether or not you commit crime depends on how well you've been integrated into society. So integrated means how well you've been included, how involved you feel, how committed you feel to society. Hershey, interestingly, didn't want to look at why people do commit crime. He wanted to look at why people don't commit crime. So he looked at it from a point of conformity. What do those people who don't commit crime have in common? And he found that if you are strongly integrated into society with lots of social bonds, essentially society has lots of social control over you, and you are less likely to want to break those bonds. Hershey argued then that there are four main bonds that prevent people committing crime, and he found four main areas where if people are integrated and involved in those areas, they're less likely to commit crime. The first one is, he said, it's whether you have attachment to other people. So if you are not isolated, if you have family, workmates, neighbours, schoolmates, friends, you don't want to disappoint them. So you're less likely to commit crime. So if all those people around you are conforming and doing the right thing, then you are more likely to do the right thing because you don't want their disapproval. You don't, that social control of your family and friends and peer group is put to work. The second is about the beliefs and values that you have. Now, for many, this would have come in the past from religion. So Hershey argued that if you have beliefs and shared values with other people, for example, through religion, or a very strong sense of principles, of ideas about what is right and wrong, you have respect for authority, you are less likely to commit crime. He also talked about commitment. So if you show commitment to the things that you're doing, for example, you see the point in working hard, you try your best in school, you get a job, you raise a family, and you do all of these things, being criminal would risk those things. People who've been committed to building their lifestyle don't want to risk it by getting into trouble with the police. And then the final one is being involved in social activities. So being part of things such as sport and extracurricular activities if you're at school, reading, art, music. If you take up your time with productive things like those, you don't have time for deviance. And particularly if you're in a team atmosphere, you don't want to let them down either. So Hershey said, if those people who don't commit crime have these things in common, that it means being a criminal puts too much of those things at risk. So what I've created here is what I've called my bonds map. I've made up the name bonds map, but I thought it was quite nice. And what I did was I had a look at how and why I don't commit crime, funnily enough, and how I fit with those four main areas. So the first one, I looked at attachment. So I'm very lucky. I'm a mum of two, I'm a wife, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I've got work friends, got other friends outside of school, and therefore I have a sense of attachment to others. Their approval and disapproval, if I was to do something wrong, would be very, very strong. I wouldn't, in particular, I don't want to let my children and my husband down. I'm not religious, but I do, as an RE teacher, obviously, spend quite a lot of time thinking about ethics and what's right and what's wrong. I have quite a strong sense of purpose about things like respect and tolerance and respecting other people. Commitment, I worked hard at school. I did well in my GCSEs and my A levels. I did 4 years at university as well as teacher training. I've been a teacher for a very long time now, and teaching is not a job for the faint-hearted. It takes a huge amount of commitment and hours, despite what the media might have you believe at the moment. And I try really hard to raise my family in you know, a productive and effective way. So, commitment that I've shown perhaps is a reason why I haven't got involved in crime. And then involvement, I play netball, I help out with my son's school on the PTA, I go and support my husband's rugby team, I'm mum's taxi, running my kids around left, right, and centre in all of their activities. So all of these things contribute, perhaps, if we kind of believe in Hershey's idea, to the reasons why I don't commit crime. Task 2, what I'd like you to do, firstly, write a sentence or two to explain in your own words how Hershey's bond theory explains why people commit crime or don't. And then I'd like you to have a go, question number 2, at creating 2 bonds maps of your own. As I said, I've made up that name, but we'll go with it. First one I'd like you to make is for someone who conforms and doesn't commit crime. So maybe you, or it could be an imaginary person or a celebrity off the TV. The other one could be for someone who does commit crime. What would their bond map look like? How might it be different? How might somebody who is involved in crime, how might the things in their life have shaped their views? And then finally, golden challenge, if you're interested, of the 2 functionalist ideas we've looked at today, which do you think has the strongest argument and why? Explain to me whether you agree more with Murray's view or with Hershey's view. Can't wait to read what you get.